My mother leaned an inch from my ear, in front of 31 senior officers, and told me to use the back door like leftover trash. I had driven 4 hours because my brother wrote one line on his invitation. Family should be here for this one. It was bait. What my mother did not know was that in 5 minutes, in that same room full of chandeliers and admirals, a Navy SEAL with shrapnel scars down his face would shove back his chair, rise to his feet, and shout 4 words that stopped the music cold. Command knows her. For 36 years, they told me I was nothing. They erased my name from the list. But the Pentagon did not. And what was hidden inside a small steel box my brother had kept secret for 17 years was about to shatter every lie this family was built on. Stay with me, because the truth about the night my father died is not the story I was raised to believe. Here is the value of what you are about to hear. You will learn how to tell the difference between something being wrong with you, something needing you to be wrong, and why forgiving someone never means handing them a key to your life. This is a story about dignity that does not require anyone's permission. If that idea matters to you, do one small thing before we begin. Tap like, leave one word in the comments, share this with someone who needs it, and subscribe so the next story finds you too. Now, let us walk back through that door together. Everybody asks me about my proudest moment. The young man with the recorder sat across from me in that quiet archive room, and that was his first question. He wanted the medal story, the mission story, the one with the helicopter. I told him I would give him the other one instead, the failure. He looked confused, the way people do. So I explained it the only way I know how. Proud moments take care of themselves. It is the failures that teach you who you are. And my greatest failure was not a mission. Nobody died because of it. No board ever reviewed it. My greatest failure was that for 36 years, I believed the people who told me I was nothing. I let them sign my paperwork. And the night I finally tore it up, that is the night worth telling. Not because I won, because of how long I had been losing without knowing it. My name is Eleanor Whitfield. Most people call me Nora. I am a lieutenant colonel in the United States Marine Corps, and I work in intelligence, in windowless rooms, on things you will never read about. I am good at being unseen. I had a lifetime of practice before I ever put on the uniform. This story starts at a door I was not allowed to walk through. It was a formal dinner at Naval Station Norfolk, honoring my younger brother, Grant. 31 senior officers filled that ballroom. I counted them later, the way you count exits. There were chandeliers, a string quartet, the kind of evening my mother had spent her whole life trying to be invited to. I drove 4 hours to be there. Grant had sent an invitation with one line at the bottom, in his own careless handwriting. Family should be here for this one. 16 years of distance. And that one sentence was enough to make me hope. That hope was the bait. I just did not know it yet. I checked in at the front table under my own name. I showed my identification. And before the coordinator could hand me a seating card, my mother stepped between us. Her name is Diane Whitfield. Silver hair, pearls, a smile she could turn on like a faucet. She leaned in close, her mouth an inch from my ear, her voice pitched for no one but me. Your name is not on the list, she said. You, showing up looking like that. You are an embarrassment. Use the side door and go home before Admiral Hargrove arrives. Looking like that. I was wearing a plain navy dress. Nothing was wrong with how I looked. What was wrong to her was that I existed in a room she was performing in. She gripped my arm. Her nails left 4 small marks I would find in the mirror later that night. She steered me toward a service door at the end of the hall. A waiter saw it. He looked away. People do that. They decide a family argument is not their business. I want you to remember that, waiter, because this whole story is about the people who look away and the one who does not. 16 years in the Corps had taught my body what to do with a hand on my arm. I could have put her on the floor before that finished his turn. Instead, I did what I always did with her. I counted. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out, and I let her win. That was when I found Grant across the room. He stood 10 feet away in his dress whites, turning a champagne flute between 2 fingers. He heard every word she said to me. I watched him hear it. And then I watched him look at the floor like it had said something interesting. I want to be fair to my brother, because the easy version of this story makes him a cartoon, and he was not one. Grant was drowning. I just did not know yet how deep. I stepped out into the parking lot. The wind came off the water and cut straight through my dress. And here is the smallest, truest thing about that moment. I was not angry. I was tired, with a bone tired, of a person who has been auditioning for love for 36 years and just heard one more time that she did not get the part. I opened my banking app. There was a standing transfer I had set up 2 years before and never once questioned. $4,000 a month to Grant. I pressed cancel. One flat beep. Done. I did not feel triumphant. I felt like a woman turning off a faucet she had been told she was lucky to be allowed to pay for. Then my other phone buzzed, the work one, and everything changed. Before I tell you what that message said, you need the wound. Because every family that picks one child to blame tells itself a story about why. And I had believed my family story so long. I had stopped hearing it as a story at all. Here is the version I grew up with. When I was a baby, got sick, a fever. My father, Walter, put me in the truck and drove for the hospital through a storm. A truck crossed the center line. My father turned the wheel at the last second, so it struck his side. Not mine. He died. I lived. And my mother decided, out loud, in a hospital waiting room, in front of a 6-year-old, that this was my fault. It should have been you. She told me, if you had not gotten sick, he would still be here. I was 6. I believed her. You believe your mother at 6. That is the whole tragedy of being 6. So I grew up the difficult one. My report cards came off the refrigerator before relatives could see them. Grant's drawings got framed. At Thanksgiving, she would tell my aunt that I took after my father's side. The hard ones. As though grief were a personality I had chosen on purpose. There was one person who saw me. My grandmother. My father's mother. Rose. She slipped $20 bills inside paperback novels and pressed them into my hands. She told me once, very plainly, that I was the only one in that family who reminded her of her son. She died when I was 14. I thought her kindness went into the ground with her. What I did not know, what I would not know for another 36 years, was that before she died, Rose left something in a safe deposit box with my name on it, and that my brother Grant had known about it since he was 19. Hold on to that. It comes back. Once he did what survivors do. I disappeared into work. I joined the Marine Corps and went into intelligence. I built a life in the dark, and I was good at it because I had been training for invisibility since I was a child. But here is the part the family story never mentioned because it never asked. I had a real life. I had Karen Sloan, a major, a fellow intelligence officer, the closest thing to a sister I will ever have. She once flew standby on her own dime to sit with me in a hospital after a bad deployment, and she ate terrible vending machine pretzels with me at 3 a.m. and made me laugh until it hurt. I had General Kate Mercer, who saw something in a quiet captain that nobody else was looking at and promoted me on merit. I had people. I just never brought them home because home was not safe to bring anything you loved. That work phone in the parking lot was from General Mercer. I read her message 3 times. It said that security had flagged that they turned me away at the door, that they had erased my name from the list. The Pentagon? She wrote, had not. Get back inside, Colonel. It is time some people learned what they have been standing next to. After 36 years of being told I was nothing, my own country had just put it in writing that I mattered. And I am not too proud to tell you, I cried, leaning on my own car. Not the pretty kind. The kind that has been waiting in line a very long time. Then I wiped my face, and I walked to the back of my Jeep, where a garment bag had been sitting quietly all night. Inside that bag were my dress blues, with 6 rows of ribbons. I want to be honest about those ribbons, because the easy version of this story has me pin them on like armor and stride back inside like a movie. The truth is that my hands were shaking. I dropped a backing pin twice, a decorated lieutenant colonel, kneeling on the floor of a Jeep in a dark parking lot, hands shaking, because she was about to walk into a room and be seen for the first time in her life. That is not a power fantasy. That is a person being brave while she is terrified. Those are 2 different things. And the second one is the one worth telling. I pinned the silver oak leaf to my collar. I laced my dress boots over a right foot that has carried me through mud at Paris Island and 12-hour watches that decided things you will never hear about. And I texted Karen one line. Going in. Her reply came back in 4 seconds. Good. Make them remember your name without your mother's permission. I want to tell you it went smoothly after that. It did not. The story almost ended at the door again. Two shore patrolmen moved to stop me. No escort. Late arrival. Standard procedure. Then the oak leaf on my collar caught the light. They froze. Snapped to attention. Saluted. That part is true, and it felt good, and I will not pretend otherwise. But inside the ballroom doors, my mother was faster than rank. She saw me come down the aisle in my blues, and instead of going pale, which is what you would expect, she did something I never saw coming. She smiled wider. She rose, touched the master of ceremonies on the sleeve, and said, warm as a Sunday morning, to the whole room, "Oh, everyone, this is my daughter, Eleanor. She has had such a hard time. We are so glad she could come tonight, in spite of everything." And just like that, she rewrote me in real time. I was not garbage at the back door anymore. Now I was the troubled daughter that the gracious mother had welcomed. The room softened toward her. A few officers gave me the gentle, pitying nod you give to someone's difficult relative. That was the reversal I did not expect. She was not going to lose to my uniform. She was going to absorb it into her performance. For about 10 seconds. She was winning again, and here is the part I am least proud of. I almost let her. 36 years of training kicked in. Do not make a scene. Count to 4. Take the side door. I felt my body start to shrink. I want to stop here and ask you something, because I think a lot of you already know this feeling. Have you ever been so trained to keep the peace that you would rather disappear than be the one who finally says, "No, that is not what happened"? Have you ever swallowed the truth? Because the truth would cost you the only family you had. That was the dilemma standing on my chest in that ballroom. Shrink and stay safe, or stand up and lose them for good. Then a chair scraped at the third table, the one reserved for special operations, and the choice got taken out of my hands. A man stood up. He wore a navy dress uniform with a seal trident on his chest. Shrapnel scars ran in pale lines down one side of his face, the kind only a blast at close range leaves behind. His name was Master Chief Joseph Brennan. He did not look at my mother. He did not look at the master of ceremonies. He shot to his feet, and before anyone in that room could move, his voice cracked across the entire ballroom like a round going off. "Stop!" he shouted. Command knows her. The string quartet died mid-note. 300 heads turned at once. He did not lower his voice yet. "I would know that face anywhere," he said, loud and rough, even with the file photo blacked out. "Command knows exactly who she is." My mother tried to slide back in. She half rose and said, "Master Chief, I think you have her confused with someone." He cut her off without raising his voice this time. One flat look, sharp enough to drop her back into her chair. "No, ma'am," he said. "I have waited 4 years to say her name in a room that would actually listen." Then he turned to face the whole room, and his voice started to shake with something he was not bothering to hide. 4 years ago, in the Hazar Valley, our comms relay went down in the first 10 minutes of an ambush. Total blackout, no extraction window left on the clock. 12 of us pulled the pins on our last grenades and started writing letters home, because the math said there was no way out of that canyon. A young lieutenant 2 tables over leaned toward his neighbor and whispered, just loud enough to carry. He said he thought that operation was still classified. Brennan heard it. He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a folded page. "The summary report was declassified last month," he said. "I carry it. Page 4. There is a line in here about an analyst, name redacted, who broke protocol to keep 12 men alive." He held the page up so the room could see it was real. I could not say her name for 4 years. I can say it now. He did not tell that story to make himself look brave. He told it to set up the cost. Because here is the part of that night nobody in the room knew. And I had never told a single soul when I fed those coordinates through. I was not authorized to be in that satellite grid. I broke into it. I sat through 11 hours of closed-door review afterward. A 2-star admiral looked me in the eye and asked if I understood I could lose my commission. I told him I understood, and I told him I would do it again. They quietly converted the charge into a commendation and sealed the whole thing under the same classification that kept Master Chief Brennan from saying my name for 4 years. So that same year, my mother was telling dinner guests I had never amounted to anything. I was risking everything I had built to keep 12 strangers alive. And I am not the only one who remembers. Brennan said, at the next table. A younger man stood up, a lieutenant commander, steadier voice, but his hands gave him away. I was the kid on that ridge, he said, 23 years old, married 4 months. I called my wife from that canyon to say goodbye. He stopped, swallowed. My daughter is 3 now. She has a photo on her wall of a radar readout she cannot read yet. Someday I will explain to her that a woman she has never met is the reason she has a father. He looked straight at me. Ma'am, I never got to say thank you. I am saying it now. And that was when something in my chest that had been clenched since I was 6 finally let go. Because for 36 years I had been told I was the reason a father died. And here was a man telling a room full of strangers that I was the reason a father lived. Both things were about my father, in a way. I just did not understand how yet. Master Chief Brennan came to attention. Then the lieutenant commander. Then a 3rd officer. And a 4th. Not on any command. Each one simply following the person beside him. Chairs scraped back across the hardwood floor in a chain, one after another, a sound like rifle bolts cycling in sequence. The 31 senior officers in that room rose to their feet. Then the rest, nearly 300 guests, all told, stood up together. I am going to tell you the uncomfortable truth right here in the middle of the prettiest moment, because it is the real lesson. That room only stood up for me once they saw the rank and read the receipts. The dignity was always there, back at that service door. They just could not see it without a uniform to read it off of. The standing ovation was beautiful, and it was also an indictment of every room that needs proof before it offers respect. I rose. I returned the salute, and I looked for my mother. She was not gloating now. She had both hands pressed to her chest, and her face had gone somewhere I had never seen it go. Not embarrassment, fear. And I assumed, wrongly, that she was afraid of losing her social standing. That was the first thing I got wrong in that act. I thought I understood my mother. I did not. Before I could speak, Grant crossed the room, not toward the stage, toward me. And he was holding a small, flat steel box. Nora, he said, and his voice was wrecked. I have to give you something. I should have given it to you 17 years ago. It was Grandmother Rose's safe deposit box. The one I told you to remember. Grandmother left this for you, Grant said. Not Mom, you. I was 19 when the bank called. Mom got there first. She told me that if I ever told you, she would cut me off. Money, school, all of it. And I was a coward, Nora. I took the deal. I have been taking that deal my whole life. I let her make you the bad one, because it meant I got to be the good one. He pressed the box into my hands. That is the whole secret of this family, he said. There was never anything wrong with you. There was something wrong with needing you to be wrong. And there it is. The shocking part of this story is not a combat secret. It is not a medal. It is the oldest, quietest reveal there is. The scapegoat was never the problem. The family just needed one. I opened the box. Inside were 3 things. My father's last letter, an old hospital intake record, and a police report. The family story said my fever caused the crash, that if I had not gotten sick, my father would not have been driving. The hospital record told a different story. My mother had been called twice that night to bring me in earlier, when it was just a low fever. She had put it off both times. She had a dinner party by the time my father got home and saw how sick I really was. It was a storm, and it was an emergency. He did not drive into that storm because of me. He drove into it because of a delay that was never mine to make. And the police report named the other driver, the one who crossed the center line. He was impaired. He had a blood alcohol level 3 times the legal limit. It was never anyone in our family's fault. Not my father's. Not mine. Certainly not a sick baby's. My mother had spent 36 years handing me her own guilt to carry because she could not bear to carry it herself. Then I read my father's letter. He had written it the week before he died. One of those just-in-case letters that service members write and hope nobody ever reads. It was addressed to me, to his daughter. I am not going to read you the whole thing, but the last line said this: if anything ever happens to me, I need you to know it was never your job to be perfect for this family. It was their job to be kind to you. Do not let anyone tell you the math the other way around. 36 years. The permission I had been waiting for my whole life had been sitting in a box, kept from me by the 2 people who needed me small. I want to pause here because I think some of you are holding a box like this too. Maybe not a steel one from a bank, Maybe it is just a memory you have never let yourself open. A thing you were told about yourself so young that you stopped questioning whether it was even true. If that is you, I want you to hear what my father wrote, as if he wrote it to you. It was never your job to be perfect for them. It was their job to be kind to you. Then came the last reversal of the night, a 3-star admiral. Admiral Hargrove, my mother's old social ally, stepped in. Smooth, calm, protective of the institution's image. This is clearly a private family matter, he said. Why do we not let the Whitfields handle this quietly and get back to the program? And there it was, the offer to make it disappear. The quiet. The same quiet that had buried my father's letter for 17 years and buried a child's whole worth for 36. Every cell in my body knew that quiet. It is the most dangerous thing in any family and in any institution. The polite agreement to not see. I made my choice. Not loud, not vengeful, just clear, with respect. Sir, I said, quiet is exactly how this happened. Quiet is what let it last. I have done quiet for 36 years. I am done volunteering for it. The Admiral sat down. Some things answer themselves once enough people are watching. And then I looked at my mother, and I finally understood the fear on her face. There was one more thing in the box. A letter from Rose, my grandmother, to me, about my mother. My mother had grown up as the scapegoat of her own mother. Picked apart, never enough. Taught that love was a thing you earned by being useful and decorative. She did to me exactly what had been done to her. Not because it was right, because it was the only script she had ever been handed. That does not excuse it. I want to be very clear with you. Understanding why someone hurt you is not the same as deciding it was acceptable. But it changed what I did next. My mother stood up on unsteady feet and came toward me. Her hand reached for my sleeve. She wanted the credibility I had just earned in front of 300 witnesses. She wanted to be the gracious mother of the colonel. Mom, I said gently, stop. I did not shame her. I did not say a word about her makeup or her age. She was a frightened woman who had hurt me. And there is no honor in kicking someone who is already on the floor. The old version of me, the angry version, wanted the cruel line. I did not use it. I am not going to call you garbage the way you called me garbage, I said. I am not going to do to you what was done to me and what was done to you before that. That stops with me. I held up the box. But I read the letter. Mom, I know what really happened that night, and I am not going to carry your guilt anymore. It was never mine. She was crying now. Eleanor, she said. I do not know how to. I know, I said. Here is what forgiveness is and what it is not. I forgive you. I am setting it down because I am tired of carrying it. And the carrying was only ever hurting me. That is the forgiveness. But forgiveness is not a key to my front door. You do not get access to me again just because you are sorry. Those are two different things. Confusing them is how people stay trapped for decades. I am free now. I would like you to find your way free too. I just cannot be the one to do it for you anymore. That is not a cold ending. That is the warmest thing I had ever been able to say to her. Because, for the first time, I was speaking to her as an equal human being, instead of a child begging to be chosen. Then I turned to Grant. He looked like he expected me to hate him. You were a kid when she made you complicit. I told him, you are not a kid now. You gave me the box tonight, in front of everyone, when staying quiet would have been easier. That counts. It does not erase 17 years, but it counts. And I am not going to pretend it does not. We do not have to be strangers. Grant, we just have to be honest, he cried. So did I. We were not fixed. But we were real for the first time. And real is where you start. General Mercer found me by the doors. She did not offer me a windowless room. I am standing up a program next quarter, she said. Mentorship and recognition for the people who do the invisible work. The analysts. The techs. The ones whose names never make it into the citation because the citation is classified. I want someone running it who knows exactly what it costs to be unseen. She paused. Can I think of anyone more qualified than you? Nora. No pressure. Just come into the light a little more often. It was the first time anyone with real power had ever offered me something without a debt attached. And then Karen Sloan shoved through the crowd, took one look at my face, and said the most important sentence anyone said all night. Okay, hero, she said. You did the thing. Now you are coming to my place, and we are getting terrible pizza. And you are going to let people who actually love you take care of you for once. That is an order. And I outrank you in this exact situation. That is the family portrait I kept. Not 300 salutes. A friend, a mentor, a brother starting over, and a master chief who became a lifelong friend. In a box from a grandmother who had loved me the whole time and found a way to tell me even after she was gone. I walked out into the Virginia night. The wind came off the water and pulled at my hair, loose now from its tight bun. For the first time in 36 years, I took one full, deep breath without counting tactical seconds to choke down the pain. Which brings us back to this room, to the reason I run that mentorship program now. There is a young soldier I work with. Her name is Hannah. She came to me last month and told me she felt invisible, that nobody in her unit sees what she does. I told her what nobody told me until I was 42 years old. You do not need their permission to be valuable. Your worth is not a vote they take when you walk into the room. Look, it was already true before they looked up. And then we got her the commendation she had earned and was too quiet to ask for. I call this my greatest failure. Let me tell you why. Because it is not the reason you think. My failure was not getting humiliated at a door. That was done to me. That is not a failure. That is a harm. My failure was the 36 years I spent agreeing with them. Believe in the math. Carrying a guilt that the evidence. A hospital record. A police report. My own father's handwriting. Proved was never mine to carry. I had the strength to disobey a 2-star admiral to save 12 lives. And for most of my life, I did not have the strength to disobey a story my mother told me when I was 6 years old. That is the failure. And maybe you have one like it. So here is what I learned, and I am going to say it plainly, because I spent a lifetime wishing someone had said it to me. There is a name for what happened to me. It is called scapegoating. It is when a family or a group needs one person to be the problem, so everyone else gets to feel fine. If you have always been the difficult one, the too sensitive one, the one whose wins disappear off the refrigerator, it may not be that something is wrong with you. It may be that something needs you to be wrong. Look at the pattern, not just the accusation. Your worth is not a vote. Those officers only respected me once they could read it off my collar. But the dignity was the same at the back door as it was under 300 salutes. Every human being carries that same dignity. The waiter. The analyst nobody thanks. The young soldier who feels invisible. You. It does not require rank, or proof, or anyone's permission. So treat people as though it is already there. Because it is. Forgiveness and access are not the same thing. You can forgive someone. Set the weight down, because the weight was only ever hurting you. And still not hand them a key to your life. Forgiveness is for your freedom. A boundary is for your safety. You are allowed to have both. Anyone who tells you that forgiving means letting them back in to hurt you again is selling you a cage and calling it grace. The cycle stops with whoever decides to stop it. My mother did to me what her mother did to her. I could have done it to the next person. I chose not to. That choice is available to you too. And it is the bravest thing most people will ever do. To be handed cruelty and to hand back something better. And the last one, go find the invisible person near you and see them. There is an analyst, a caregiver, a coworker, a quiet kid, someone doing the work that holds the room up while the room applauds someone else. You do not have to wait for a master chief to stand up at a gala. You can be the one who stands up today for free. That is the only medal that is actually yours to give. I was nothing for 36 years. To the people who refused to look, I was a whole person the entire time. So are you. So is everyone you will meet today who is standing by the back door, waiting for someone to finally say their name. That is not my greatest failure anymore. Learning that out loud in time to teach it might be the closest thing I have to a victory. If this story reached something in you, if you have ever been the one told to use the back door, do me one favor. In the comments, tell me about the moment you stopped carrying someone else's guilt. I read them. They matter to me, and they matter to the person scrolling past who thinks they are the only one. And if a story like this finds the people who need it, that is the whole point. So if it found you at the right time, subscribe. And the next one will find you too. One honest note before you go. This is a dramatized story, but family scapegoating and the weight people carry from it are very real. If any of this hit close to home, you are not difficult. You are not too much. Talking with a licensed counselor, or even one trusted person, can be the start of setting that weight down. You do not have to do it alone, and you do not have to do it today. You just have to know it was never yours to carry in the first place. Take care of yourselves. And the next time you see someone being sent to the back door, say their name. So, what does all of this leave us with? Once the chandeliers are dark and the room is empty, it leaves us with 5 quiet truths. And I want you to carry them out of here with you. The first: there is a name for being the one who is always blamed. It is called scapegoating. And it is when a family or a group needs one person to be the problem, so everyone else gets to feel fine. If your wins kept vanishing off the refrigerator, it may not be that something was wrong with you. It may be that something needed you to be wrong. Look at the pattern, not just the accusation. The second: your worth is not a vote. That room only stood up once they could read the rank off a collar. But the dignity was exactly the same back at the service door. Yours is too, right now, with no proof and no permission required from anyone. The third: forgiveness and access are not the same thing. You can set the weight down because the weight was only ever hurting you, and still not hand the person who hurt you a key to your front door. Forgiveness is for your freedom. A boundary is for your safety. You are allowed to have both. The fourth: the cycle stops with whoever decides to stop it. Cruelty gets handed down like an heirloom, parent to child, until one person refuses to pass it on. Be that person. It is the bravest thing most of us will ever do. And the fifth: go find the invisible person near you and truly see them. The caregiver, the quiet coworker, the kid who feels like no one is watching. You do not have to wait for someone to stand up at a gala. You can be the one who stands up. Today, for free. That is the only medal that is actually yours to give. Nora believed she was nothing for 36 years. She was a whole person the entire time. And so are you. So is every single person you will meet who is standing by the back door, waiting for someone to finally say their name. If this reached you tonight, leave one word in the comments about the moment you stopped carrying someone else's guilt. Share it with the person you were thinking of the whole way through. And subscribe, because someone out there needs to hear that it was never theirs to carry either, and your one click helps this find them. A gentle and honest note before you go. This is a dramatized story, but family scapegoating and the weight it leaves behind are very real. If any of it hit close to home, please know you are not too much and you are not difficult. Speaking with a licensed counselor or even one trusted person can be the beginning of setting that weight down. This content was researched, built, and edited by hand by our team, created to carry real meaning and a lasting lesson. Thank you for listening all the way to the end.